Hi yogis, I am here today to teach you the basics of Bakasana, which is crow pose. So make sure that before you get started, you've got a block or a book handy, and I want you to make sure that you have warmed yourself up. We've got plenty of 10-minute warm-up flows that you can do. We want to make sure the shoulders and the hips are nice and warm and the body is ready to start playing with arm balances. So let's jump into it. Crow pose. So I'm going to quickly show you what crow pose looks like, and then we're going to break it down. Cool. So with any arm balance, it's super important to start with your foundation, your hands. If your hands are the only thing on the floor, then you want to make sure that they're super strong so that they can hold the rest of the body. The feet were designed for it, you're used to it, you've been walking since you were a toddler. Your hands are not so used to it unless this is something that you practice pretty frequently. So the first thing, fingertips spread nice and wide. No queen hands, keep the fingers nice and wide. The more surface area you have, the easier it's going to be to carry your weight. The next thing, your fingertips, the bridge of your hand, so that little squishy padding where the fingers come into the hand, and then the padding at the bottom of your hand, the heel of your hand, before it gets to the wrist. You really want to make sure they're super grounded. The rest of the hand should have a little bit of movement, and that movement is used to stabilize the wobbles throughout the body. And this goes for any arm balance, but crow is one of them. So you're transitioning into arm balances, transition meaning that there is movement from one place to another. That movement's got to go somewhere, that energy needs to go somewhere. So being able to have the little wiggles in the hands to adjust for the wiggles throughout the body is where you find balance. Sounds complicated, and I guess it is, but the more you practice it, the simpler it becomes. So the first thing that I want you to think about when you're placing your hands down, other than getting those 3 points connected, is this jellyfish type movement. So I want you to come into a little bit of a squat. Bring your inner soles, the side edges of the insides of your feet, towards each other, or heels together and toes out. And then bringing your hands down. Bring your hands down, shoulder width apart, fingertips are spread nice and wide. And I want you to just play with pushing a little bit of weight into the hands, trying that little jellyfish movement where the knuckles lift. And as you start to really pull the fingertips in towards each other, that jellyfishing motion, you should start to feel the forearm switching on. So maybe it's a gentle sensation, maybe it's a really strong sensation, that's fine, but you should feel some sensation in the forearm as you do this jellyfish motion. So that's the first step, getting the hands right. When you start in this little squat position and you're getting the hands right, we want to move to the next part. So we're trying to create a shelf on the triceps. So as we transition our weight into the hands, we're going to start to bend the elbows to create that shelf. So it's a similar position to a chaturanga position in your flow yogas. So you're going to be bringing the elbows into the body and into a shelf position. We're just going to be doing this from a squat. So if it helps from this angle, you don't want your elbows coming out like wings. You want them coming in, so that when you are bringing your knees on later on, there's a shelf there. You want to try and keep, when you bring the knees on, your knees as far away from the elbows as possible. I think in the textbooks it's knee into the armpit socket itself, which is quite hard to achieve. You need a lot of things in the body to line up together for that to happen. So we just try to go as high as we can. The tricep muscle, the one that bands down the outside of the arm, will start to push against the knee as the knee pushes against the arm, and that will help you to find your balance. So coming into your little squat, fingertips spread wide, shoulder width apart, pulling through the fingers, bending the elbows. You're now going to start to feel a lot more weight into the hands, into the forearms. Maybe the shoulders and upper arms are switching on. Rocking backward and forwards here is how you build up that strength, and supporting strength for the wrists. Crow is primarily for wrists, shoulders, and core. This is where the wrist work comes in. I have had some serious injuries in the wrists that have been managed by doing these motions a lot. And now I'm able to do a lot of crazy arm balances because I spent time in this space. So don't be ashamed or have any judgment of just spending time here. This is still crow. If you're feeling like you can manage a little bit more, the next step that I would recommend is to lengthen the legs up even if there's a bit of a bend, just finding some height so that when you start to then bend the arms and shift forward, there's a little bit more weight coming in and you're starting to feel more into the upper arms and the shoulders. Trying to open the chest, so sending the chest forward between the hands as you come forward, feeling into that space. So once that gets nice and strong and we're feeling good there, we go through the whole motion. I want you to think of like a bird in flight. So some of the poses in yoga, the names of them are really visually descriptive, and I feel like this is one of them. So you're thinking about a crow taking flight. So it's starting in this perch position, which is where we often start while we're practicing and building up the strength. And then it's so our weight's going to go through the feet and up into the hands. So we lift the heels. As we lift the heels, we transition more weight into the hands. We bend the elbows to create that shelf. We're going to tuck in. So I'm squeezing the belly and trying to tuck in as high as I can get onto those arms. Keep transitioning my weight into the hands and pick the feet up. Now, a key thing for me that makes it seem more visually representative of a crow position or a crow itself is that as you get into this lift, you tuck your tail feathers underneath you. So that seems to help me with visualizing the crow and why it's called that. So I sort of said a little bit of it there, but we've gone from hands, wrists and forearms to the upper arms, and now we're adding the knees. So from your standing position, if we're taking this option, you're trying to stay in a tiny little ball and bring the knees on. So bring as little space between your thighs and body as you can, squeezing the belly, squeezing everything together, and trying not to fall forward. So I'm exaggerating things a little here, but squeezing everything in, thighs towards each other, feet tucking in, belly is engaged, pushing through the arms, balance. Now, I'm very aware that doing this hip lifted position is not always available, and it can take a lot of work to build up the strength and length in the hamstrings. So this is why I suggested that you grab a block. It can help to start from a perched position on the block to help to feel. So from the crouched position that we started with, if you're there, but then when you lift the hips up, you can't even get any kind of movement forward because there's just not enough space or length in the hamstrings. Instead, come into a little perched position on your block. Heels together, toes wide, knees wide. Bring the hands down. Lift as you can from here, and as you transition forward, you'll notice that the knees get nice and high really easily. And then you can pick up. So that's an option. These are versions of crow, and there are versions and variations to suit all bodies' strengths and capabilities. These are versions of crow that will help you with transitioning to other arm balances in the future. If you're just wanting to fly and have a little bit of fun and see what it feels like to have your weight in your hands, there is another option that I will give to people. It's not going to help you with transitioning to other arm balances, but sometimes, because everyone learns differently, you just need to feel what it feels like to be weighted into the hands. So here's another alternative. From the crouching position, instead of transitioning forward your weight from the feet into the hands, lifting the hips up, you're going to bring your hands down a little bit further away. You'll see I'm reaching a little bit more. I'm going to have a bend starting, and I'm going to bring my knees, the squishy side part of the knee on the inner thigh, onto as high up on the arms as I can get it. I'm going to try to squeeze at the same time as I pick my hips up. And this squeezing in is going to allow me, the legs actually pressing onto the sides of the arms and squeezing in, to find that strong sensation in the core that I was talking about. And once you get used to that sensation, then you can place the knee directly onto the triceps in the first version. If crow is already part of your practice, you may want to find a way to make it a little bit stronger, or where those progressions are. You're looking at your power or vinyasa 2 classes where you can start to play with that. But hopefully this helps you give some understanding of your foundations, of how we lift, and something to play with to start to build your way to Bakasana. Thanks for being here with me. Namaste.